Right, we'll start today with a karakia timatanga from Councillor Goff.
Kia ora. Whakataka te hau. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kinakina ki utu. Ki mā tara ki tai. Aki, ahi aki, ana te ata kura. He tio, he huka, he ho hu. Tihei Māori ora.
Thanks, James.
Hey, we're going to have to do the same
You
again.
have to repeat it now. You have to repeat it. That was excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have an apology, not an apology for lateness because he's just turned up, Councillor Daniels. Any apologies? I haven't had any through. Yeah, and Leanne for lateness. Someone to move those? Melanie and Pauline second. All those in favour? Aye. Carried, thank you very much. Declarations of interest, I haven't had any in. If any pop up during the meeting, could you please let us know? And confirmation of previous minutes. Do I have a mover for those? Mike and Andrew to second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No, carried, thank you very much. So today we're starting with a public forum. So Mark Gerard is going to come and talk to us about the Blue Plaque project on behalf of Historic Places Canterbury. Welcome, Mark. You'll be aware of the guidelines. It's sort of 5 minutes, and if there's time at the end, then there might be space for a question. Yeah,
Yes.
That's the one.
That's the one. Thank you, councillors, for running the public forum. My name's Mark Gerard. I'm Chair of Historic Places Canterbury. You probably hopefully know that. I'd like to introduce Nigel Gilkison from Historic Places Mid Canterbury, who's an urban designer and architect based in Timaru. This is a briefing, and just to tell you what's going on, we're not asking for money, so you can relax. In front of you, you should have a blue plaque, what we call DLA, which explains the Heritage Blue Plaque project and the letter of recommendation from New Zealand, from NZ, Heritage New Zealand. Just as a brief background, the council generously hosted the launch of the Heritage Blue Plaque in Christchurch about a year ago, 18 months ago, and that's the property developers and interested parties in Christchurch. So we've actually come here to inform you as our civic leaders that we're actually, the first one is due to be unveiled in Christchurch soon. I won't give you the details because for obvious we like to put a media release out and get people to turn up because we think it's cause for celebration, so we're really pleased. Nigel, if you wouldn't mind showing us, you've got a blue plaque so we can show them what it looks like.
One here. So there we go.
With your permission, while Nigel gives a briefing, I can go around the table. You can see it firsthand.
You can hand it round if you want.
You really got to see it because it really means something. Sorry?
No, these are.
No, not yet. In addition to briefing and its initiation, we've been in discussions with the council staff, informal emails, etc., backwards and forwards, and we'll meet with them today to see how it fits in with the district plan. Although at the moment we can't see any impediments for them being mounted on the buildings and attached. We'd also, just to let you know, that we've had an informal approach of interest from the Rose Chapel Trust, who've looked at it and said, oh, this looks interesting. And since the council owns the building, and if you're supportive, we'll start initiations with staff because I think they were sort of thinking it might be an idea to put one on the fence for the Rose Chapel at the street to market because the chapel itself is locked off. But the council owns the building, so we thought it's a really good idea to approach you first and then ask the staff to see how it looks and see what the approach is and see if we can follow on this one up. We should point out that the Blue Plaque is a community-led initiative. Historic Places Canterbury is part of it. Historic Places Mid Canterbury are part of the group that are federated to Historic Places Aotearoa, and this is part of our national initiative. And I'll ask Nigel to explain how the buildings qualify and the rollout, and there are 2 other towns that have got Heritage Blue Plaque projects already rolling, where they're being rolled out. Nigel.
Thank you, Mark. This project was initiated a couple of years ago by our group, Historic Places Mid-Canterbury, based in Ashburton. And it's really an initiative to promote heritage buildings and to identify them, but also to give a little bit of information. So it has a little bit of a story on each plaque about the building. So those are the two main things in terms of heritage recognition. One is recognising it as a heritage building, and in that respect, these plaques are actually better suited in some ways to go on buildings that don't have plaques already, so not necessarily the top grade of buildings, although they have been done. We've done 8 in Mid-Canterbury so far, with another 3 to go up in the next, probably just after Christmas. We tend to do about 5 at a time, and I'm also, as Mark mentioned, I'm from Timaru. I'm with the Civic Trust in Timaru, and we've got an initiative to roll out these plaques down there as well. So we've done 5, we've got 2 up in Timaru already. We've also got 1 in Kurau. So we're starting to spread them out through our network, through Historic Places Aotearoa, through our member organisations throughout the country. So it was really started as a grassroots initiative, and we want to keep it like that, really, so that we can actually, what we've done was we've written a whole host of guidelines about the wording, how to select the wording, how to select the buildings. I mean, generally they will be listed buildings, but they are selected by the local heritage groups in each place. And the program is used by them to promote themselves as well as their buildings, get that recognition. So it's not a commercial venture for us. This is something that we've set up. We are essentially delivering them at cost to the different organisations. They cost about, including GST, $1,500 per plaque. And so they're made of cast aluminium. So the lettering actually is cast as part of it, so it won't fall off. The blue colour is a powder coating colour. It goes into the oven, the whole thing gets covered in the blue powder coat. It then gets the top surface shaved off, and it actually gets hand finished. They're manufactured down in Dunedin by a company called John Swan Limited, and they make a very, very good job of them. They are so then the final stage is they go back and they get a full clear powder coating colour over them. So they're very robust. They're designed to last for as long as the building, really. And essentially they came from, and particularly the colour and the shape comes from the blue plaques in London and the UK. So that's really we wanted to see that recognition, that international recognition. And a lot of other countries, we did quite a lot of research on plaques all over the world, have adopted that blue colour. So it becomes synonymous with heritage recognition.
That's great. Thank you very much. I know we're at the 5 minutes, but I'm going to allow one question. Ooh, 2 hands. Tim.
Thank you. I'm just interested with the blue. Have you talked to heritage teams? Because I know that at times our heritage team can be very pedantic, and so someone's restored and gone through the whole resource consent process with regards to colours, and then you've put a blue plaque on it. And so as a building owner or a restorer, you've been given all these rules that you've got to comply with, and most of them are more than happy to, but then suddenly a blue plaque goes on your cream wall or something. So has that been a discussion, or is that just blue is accepted and standard?
We wanted to have a sort of a standard, so one standard in terms of design, size, shape and colour, and text as well, so that they are uniform. The blue in the UK, when they were developing that over 100 years ago, they tried a whole lot of different colours, and really the emphasis was to try and make it stand out against the buildings. So that was why they selected the blue colour. So it's not to try and match in with the thing. It's actually, it's blue for a purpose, actually, so that it does stand out.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, and look forward to the first one being unveiled.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, we have no deputations by appointment today, no presentation of petitions, but we do welcome Chrissy Williams to come and present the minutes for September, October and November of Te Tira Kahikuhiku, the Transformational Land Uses Group. Welcome, Chrissy.
So, are you operating that, Aidan, or am I? Thank you. Kia ora koutou. It's 3 months since I was here last. Hard to believe, isn't it? So I'm reporting just on the last 3 months' activity, or mostly a little bit of overlap, and just catch you up with where things are and then answer any questions. So we've had 3 recent meetings. I think your agenda lists the 2nd of September is the 9th of September at one stage, I think. So they're held on the first Wednesday of the month. We are open to deputations, although the meetings aren't open to the public. So we've had a few, and they're mostly from proponents who've already got projects in the red zone or are applying for licences or leases or for funding from us for projects. So we've had the Eco Action Nursery Trust, to whom we gave a grant the month before, and Revolution, who are talking about wanting a lease over quite a lot of the area around Avebury House. And then the disc golf CEO talked about what their wishes are or their, what they'd like in the red zone, and they've already got a number of disc golf courses around Christchurch apparently, so I imagine some of you are familiar with those. In November we had Daryl Miller, who was the consultant planner at Regenerate Christchurch, working on the regeneration plan and particularly the district plan parts of that. So he came and talked to us about the regeneration plan and the district plan. And I talked to you about that last time. This is one of the critical issues for us that I think we're fumbling with a little bit, and any guidance would be really helpful. Darryl was really clear, and I agree with him, that when we're making decisions, even about transitional uses, they should comply or fit in or generally be in line with the regeneration plan, and certainly should fit in with the district plan. And in some cases, projects will need resource consents, even for transitional uses. There's very few temporary uses that would be allowed through them. So some of us are looking quite tightly at the regeneration plan and district plan. Lynn's less so, and some of the members in the group less so. So we're just trying to get some consensus of how we work with the regeneration plan and the district plan, and don't end up with activities, even in a transitional way, that don't fit in with what was intended in the regen plan. So that is quite an issue for us, and I think it will be for council when they own the land as well. So just summarising some of the decisions or recommendations we've made through to Lynn's, I think when I summarise it the way that I have here, these are licences. So remember, licences are where people don't have exclusive use of the site. They're mostly for investigative work, some of them over quite large areas. Really, there's only a couple there that are significant. One was for the Waitakere Eco Sanctuary to do some investigations in the area south of Travis Road, north of New Brighton Road, that they've been looking at for quite a long time. And the other was from some smaller sections, but from He Wakatapu and Bailey Perriman, to look at some soil remediation trials. The rest are around events and quite small site-specific projects. And then leases, the first half, I've got a second slide on these. Again, the variations to leases, they're for single sections. That last one on that list from the University of Canterbury was for an area in Avon Loop. That was a very large area, and we suggested they didn't need that area. It's for a demonstration of engineering projects where students can go and test some of their ideas in a large space, and also demonstrate those to the public. And then the rest of those ones the last one, Fito Schools, that's similar to the Adventure Avenue project that I think you've heard a number of times from the Banks Avenue School. So this is for Fito School, for a different area, to do something similar, and for the children to design a few sections in Avonside Drive, right next to Avon Park. So I guess just in summarising those, what we're getting through is that there's nothing sort of really amazing, or they're very much just small sites, small projects, events, and maybe that's because we're only considering transitional uses. If we were considering permanent ones, which we aren't yet and you aren't yet, things may be different. So this is really worth having a look at. I've lost the URL down the bottom, but you probably couldn't access it anyway, but we can send it through. Lynn's have a public map viewer that shows an overlay of the licences, leases and access agreements for access. It's a bit hard to pick up on this map, but the licences are shown in red, the same colour as the red zone. But there's, can I point on this or not? Oops. No, you can't see my cursor. So that area of Avonside Loop, that large area to the left of the map, the west of the map, that's north of Retreat Road. The Eden Project have got a licence over that land. You can't see it on the scale of this map, but there's a couple of little leases dotted throughout for Avon Otokaru Forest Park. So that lease occupies a large area. And then if you go to that vertical part of the river downstream from Kerr's Reach, there's 2 patches on either side of the river that have got a licence over them, and that's for the rowing consortium to look at widening the river. The other one that we've agreed to is the one for the Waitakere Eco Sanctuary licence, and that's not on there. It's at the area to the west of Anzac Drive, so that's not on the map yet because I don't think they've quite finalised it. And then down in Bexley, that north of Pages Road there's a licence there. That's a City Council licence for the work that you're planning to do around the stormwater pond and and stock banks in that area. So again, one of the things I've been thinking about is that you've got licences over really large areas, and once there's a licence under the area, people can't apply for a lease in the area. So those licences are sort of hogging huge areas. The green one, just so that you know, is an access agreement. That's for Ngā Matawaka to get access for driving courses. So it's not exclusive from other uses, but it looks like it takes up a lot of space. You can filter out different activities and different levels of lease if you're looking at that. So that's perhaps something that needs thinking about and discussions with LINZ. It may be too hard to change the way they work at this stage. As far as the funding that we've got delegation for, we've 46,000 in the last few months, and I think our meeting next week we're considering about another 40,000. So the money's not rushing out the door. The requirement to already have I talked about this last time, to already have a lease or a licence is probably still a restriction on people, but also it puts a little bit of security, I suppose, for the fund that people are using it for projects rather than for a lot of planning. So ongoing issues, same list as last time. So I've talked about their alignment with the region plan and the district plan. The transitional versus permanent uses is still an issue for us, where people are applying for transitional uses that are clearly going to become permanent. And I think still the biggest issue is the first come, first served. We've got no visibility of how LINZ decides which applications come to us first, and whether they're looking at applications for the same sites, or whether they as once there's an application and they don't let anyone else apply for that area. I've had some insight into it. I've been working with the Avon Loop Planning Association, who are really keen for a peace park in a part of Avon Loop, and they're really being told there's no spare space in Avon Loop, which is really surprising when the map doesn't show any leases or licences. So that we're going to have a discussion next week with LINZ about that, and see if we can be more aware of expressions of interest that are coming through. And I just raised the ecological restoration again. It just feels like it's just not happening, and the money's there and available and not being used, and there's not much leadership or guidance being provided. So I'll just say that one again. And last time I presented this list from the regeneration plan for the first steps, and the one that's moved is the finalised governance, and you've got the resolution from 2 weeks ago about starting discussions on that. But everything else is pretty much sitting the same, and the implementation plan is being thought about, I think, and staff can talk to you about that. But it's really quite an essential product that we need to be able to make good decisions. We and the new governance group need. And finally, just like to encourage and support the decisions you made 2 weeks ago about commencing the discussions on the co-governance group and working with Ngāi Tahu and the University of Canterbury on that, and on the policy for proposals. Do make the last comment there that I think in the report that you had, it said that the policy and decision-making delegations may need to be amended. I'm saying they will certainly need to be amended if you get a co-governance entity. You're going to have to bite the bullet and delegate decision-making to that co-governance entity if you want it to be a group of people who are willing, talented people who are willing to put the time in and really commit to making that co-governance entity work. Otherwise, the option is you end up with a group like ours that really doesn't have much teeth at all, many teeth at all, and the ability to keep people engaged and keep good people on it will be diminished. So that's just a summary of where we're at. Trying to raise some issues as well as the group's working really well together. Been a few absences more recently with people not being well and staying away, which is always good. But I feel there's also a bit of lack of energy in the group because of the kind of things that are coming to us aren't really floating people's boats very much. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Chrissy. I'm sure there's going to be questions. Yanni, to start with.
So, really interested in what we could do, like resolutions or otherwise, to get that ecological restoration happening. So is there anything that would be useful for us to give directional guidance to? I'm just not quite sure the process by which we can help you on that.
I mean, Andrea or Brendan might be able to answer, but just understanding what Council's plan is for that $25 million. Where's the plan for making sure that we've got plant supply? Where are the nurseries? Who's supplying it? Who's deciding what areas are going to be priority areas? So it's understanding who's driving that. Right. And I haven't seen anyone driving it other than the Avon Autocardo Forest Park and perhaps Colin Merck. But so who's driving it, what the plans are, and what's Council's role in ecological restoration? Because at this stage it seems to be being left to community organisations to do anything.
Are you aware of the stop banks and the work that's happening there, which I think is about half of that budget? Is it 13 million for the others? The more local councils will know, just off that Pages Road. Is it Waitakere? What's it called? Waitakere?
North of that's what I pointed to. Yeah.
So is that part of the ecological restoration, as you're aware? Or
there's much of it. Yeah, I mean it's small in when you look at the 600 hectares.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean plants in the ground, but it needs to know that that the planning's happening,
yeah, okay, cool.
And the plants are being grown. Plants you can't grow them today and plant them tomorrow. There's a huge lead into this project.
And I guess
what did I say?
The eco nursery, is that the one that the students are involved with the schools? And that seems like a really good model. Has there been any discussion about scaling that up to bring in either more schools or more resource or space in terms of growing the plants?
Yeah, they're raising 20,000 plants a year, and a hectare needs 10,000 plants. I mean, they'll probably do a couple of hectares a year. It's probably more than that because it won't be totally dense. But the scale would be it's a huge scale, and I think that current nursery is absolutely at the capacity. I mean, David Newton's working himself, to a bone to get that work done, and it's all voluntary for him. Yeah. I mean, he's a full-time school teacher. So another model is Trees for Canterbury, but they have become to the point that they're self-sufficient in the way, well, mostly, I know they get some funding, but that they grow and sell plants. And when I've talked to Steve Bush about it, he said we couldn't use that model if we were growing plants for the red zone. All we would want to do is grow plants. We wouldn't want to be selling them. So we'd need additional funding to be able to.
I mean, I guess I was thinking of like the stuff that David Newton's doing, whether we could put a kind of immediate capital injection into that kind of idea, extend it to more schools with some dedicated resource to kind of extend it so that it could do more.
Yeah, I'll just remind you that we had they did come and talk to us, and I think they are talking to staff about those kind of things. There is limited capacity at the moment, but they do have plans to expand.
Right, okay, thanks. And just the only other question from me was the big areas that have been licensed, was that done by LINZ?
Two of them were, and then the Waitakere Eco Sanctuary is but they're all done by LINZ.
And how long do those licences go for the two that were done by LINZ?
1, 2, 3 years.
Right, okay.
But they're for investigations, so they're very unobtrusive. The people going in there, perhaps digging a few holes, but they do claim the land.
I hear your concern.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
But it's also, I think that some of them are also using it as a way of claiming the land, so that when they want to do that, if they get round to doing a permanent use, they've kind of got that land, and there's not a lot of other leases within that they're then going to have to to deal with. So it's probably being used in that way a little bit.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anne?
Thanks, Chrissy. It's good that you mentioned Colin Burke. I was at a meeting last night when he was talking about the Waitakere project that you were talking about. So do I hear you say that there doesn't seem to be linking of a lot of these projects and that there isn't a vision? So he was talking about Christchurch becoming an eco city, like, a wee bit like London, for example. But did I hear you say that you didn't think there's much direction happening with that kind of thing?
No, I think the community organisations that are doing their projects they're pretty self-sufficient and they're talking with each other. It's more that 25 million sitting from the CREF fund that was destined for ecological restoration. Now, I know a lot of that's dependent on when the stop banks go in and where the stormwater's going. So no, I'm more putting it back, I suppose, at council and their role in this, because those groups are doing quite a lot of work. I would say with the Waitakere Eco Sanctuary, when our group recommended to LINZ that they have a licence for investigations, we were very clear that that did not imply that it was support of the long-term project. So, because that has to go through its own process. So we've been quite careful in our recommendations around those kinds of things.
Thanks. Pauline?
Yes, thanks, Chrissy. I'm just wondering if it's something that the TWE committee could pick up and follow through with that ecological restoration stumbling block, that maybe we could work with staff to find.
What?
The Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment Committee. Do you think that might be appropriate?
I think it's currently sitting with the Parks team, so, but I think it needs a discussion, and I think it needs a...
Well, it's ecological
it needs a briefing.
restoration.
So I've asked Mary already to organise a briefing.
Okay, so you've got it
to
under
give us an update on
control.
where all that stuff is up to, when reports are coming,
Yeah.
how the nursery stuff is. And I know that there is work happening in the background, but we need an update on that.
Great.
Yeah.
And perhaps our group does as well, so, because I don't want
Yes,
to be
because
talking
you need to be
at odds. with what's
absolutely. Yeah, I think that inviting them to the briefing would be really good. Yeah, Melanie.
As part of that, could we hear from LINZ as well?
Yes. Yeah. So maybe a small group of us sit down and work out what we need in a briefing. Yeah.
Do you have a joint meeting with LINZ and the council on a regular basis? Is that...
Our group doesn't.
No, because I'm just wondering whether it would be useful if you and presume Andrew and or Brendan or both met with LINZ on a regular basis, so that there is that joined up conversation happening all the time.
Yeah, if it may be happening already. We have LINZ staff attend our meetings and report to our meetings, but that's the relationship with Glenys, and our staff do most of that liaison. So at another level would be useful.
I think from a governance perspective it would give comfort, because I find your minutes report really interesting, because it just gives a snapshot of the issues that you're looking at, but often there are issues raised within that context, and I think there must be a better way of connecting that. We've been having discussions internally, obviously, about the projects that appear in silos across our LTP, but the need for that overarching sort of almost centralised overview, so that helicopter view is not lost in the silos. And this sounds like a very similar conversation. I just wonder if there's a short circuit. The second thing was the co-governance thing. I guess that I've been a bit of a driver behind that, and I'm very keen for what you've learnt in terms of your group to be very much engaged in the co-design of the process that will lead to a co-governance model. So, we've got an opportunity to do something quite groundbreaking internationally, and I've already had a brief conversation with Tamari, and he's going to advance that discussion with Eric. And I think Eric was surprised to see his name mentioned in dispatches at a meeting of the council without having been talked to first, but that was my fault. I should have really talked to him beforehand, and I think just with various conversations that have been going on in the past, there was an assumption, I made an assumption that he already knew that we were going to be discussing that. But I think he's very keen, Tamaire's very keen to take that model that we started at the university last year and build on that.
Just a couple of things in response. I think we haven't had those discussions with LINZ because there's been an anticipation that the land was going to be handed over, by mid next year. Now that it's not going to be, I think working out some constant relationship with LINZ is important. And the second thing, the co-governance. I mean, the other night, I think some of you were aware, I spoke at Tuesday Club and I separated out very clearly my comments on co-governance from my role as chair. So, I've been doing a lot of thinking and writing about co-governance, but our group, Te Tere Kahikiku, hasn't had those discussions. So, but there's, as you say, there's lessons from our group that can inform the process. So, I'm really keen to be involved in any discussions.
One last quick thing from me. What issues do you see coming up with the transition of the land and the leases and licences as land is handed over from LINZ to council? And are there discussions happening about how we manage that, do you know?
I know staff have had discussions, again, probably shouldn't speak for them, but my understanding is they've had advice that the leases can be transferred. There's a special word for it that's just gone from my head right at this moment.
Novated?
Assigned, reassigned?
Assigned?
No,
novated,
it's a different word from
something.
that. Probably would have remembered that one. Novated.
Novated?
Novated. Ask a lawyer. Leases could be novated, but licences can't. I think whatever happens, that there shouldn't be an automatic novation, or that they need to be thought through to say, do they fit in with the plan? Are they, do they fit in with the implementation plan? How do they conflict with infrastructure and things like that? So I think for many of the things that are happening, it would be good to continue the leases, but it needs to be done thoughtfully, not automatically.
That's great. Thank you very much. Are there any last questions for Chrissy? No, thank you so much, Chrissy. And we won't see you until the new year, but have a great break over Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have a mover to receive those? Leanne and Pauline. All in favour? Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. We now move to the Capital Endowment Fund. So, welcome, Sam. Okay, so we have 4 organisations that have applications in for the Capital Endowment Fund. And any questions for Sam, I guess? Dan.
Hey, thanks very much, Sam. The Riccarton Sports Hub, can I just ask, because I look at how we do it in some of the other sports clubs, how come that wasn't, or were they given the option of it being a loan, or did we talk to them about potentially loaning the money as opposed to granting them the money?
When Ange Leatherby joins us, she'll be able to speak more specifically to that application, but I don't believe there was a conversation about a community loan,
Right.
Because they meet the eligibility of the capital endowment. She's on her way, but yeah. Because they meet the eligibility criteria for the capital endowment fund, it went to that. So I guess with a lot of applications, there's always that consideration, loan or grant, and these guys come in as a grant. Just to speak to the report, if I may, while people ponder other questions. I guess there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. One was just a reminder of the criteria that Council established, which of course could be changed in the future, but this is the criteria we were working to, and this is for the fund is for community organisations who are doing projects that are one-off, that have a long-term benefit, that will see no additional further costs to Council, either in terms of the initial setup or ongoing. Projects that are at least of scale of over $50,000, and things that are new, so not projects that are halfway through and run out of funds, so it's for new initiatives. I guess keen to also just highlight section 4 of the report, which talks about the alternative option, just to save this money and make it as a rates reduction as an option for Council to consider. It's not the staff recommendation, as we've considered Council's intention through COVID to increase community funding at a time like this. additionally, the fund was set aside during that long-term plan and not used as savings, and we're therefore were able to invite groups to apply. But I guess I wanted to highlight that as an option. Additionally, I'm keen, these are all projects that we feel are community groups that we are partnering with as a council, as staff, towards things that meet the priorities of council. And I guess to highlight that, I'm keen to welcome Community Development Advisor Stacey to speak to one of these.
Okay. Ko ora ki tukumanga, ko arahua tukawa, ko takatumi tukawaka, ko nai tahu tukaiwi, ko Ngāti Wawai tukahapu, ko Taru Takurai, ko Stacey Takawinga. Kia ora, good morning. My name is Stacey and I have worked for council for a long time. And most of that has been with and for young people, but currently I'm, as Sam said, the Community Development Advisor for Papanui Innes. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. It is my honour and privilege to talk to the Tōra Hau application. It's something that I'm passionate about, just with my background with working with young people and being Māori. Being Māori in Christchurch is unique, I'll say. I grew up in the 80s, where there was a negative in our city, racist, I will say, anti-skinhead, so it's interesting. And a lot of Māori people came to Christchurch in the 40s and 60s through the trade training schemes. So that's where young Māori men and women left their hometowns and travelled to Christchurch to make a new home. And in doing that, in those times, they lost their connections. Some, not all, lost their connections to their whenua, to where they're from. So I started today on purpose with my mihi, because that's my connection to my land, to my people, my whakapapa, to my tūpuna. And so that's telling the story. I'm lucky because I've had people in my life tell me, who guided me through that. And some of our young people don't. So some of our young people have lost that. And that's where Tōra Hau comes in, because I know, as Councillor Cotter, Davidson, McDonald, Goff and Kieran will know, Tōra Hau is a hidden gem in Papanui. They work with young Māori and Pacific people across the city. They get young people, they know young people. Their whakawhanaungatanga, their manaaki, their aroha for young people is life-changing. As a youth worker, you don't do it for the money. You do it to make a difference. And when you see that spark and see a young person make a change, it's just kind of like yourselves. You do this job to make a difference for the people. To be part of that small part of that journey is amazing. What else can I tell you about Tōra Hau? I'm not sure how many of you guys have spent time on marae. Once you get through the scary pōwhiri and the whakakoro and all of that, just actually being on marae is amazing. You just, if you sit in the wharenui or on the mattresses in the kitchen, hearing the stories, and you just learn so much. It's it's good for your spirit, your wairua. It is enlightening. It is powerful. It's magic. If you have any opportunity to spend more than half an hour on a marae, I would, because that's where the magic happens. That's where you learn about tikanga, you learn about Māori, you learn about the history. So for Tōra Hau to have that opportunity to build a whare for the young people of our city would be amazing. This project is about young rangatahi base, so they've been involved in the concept design. So having a whare that is purposely built for young people is different, because obviously in our tikanga is our kaumātua and you look to your elders, but this is kind of a game changer, I think. So any investment council could do today to this organisation they could push go, they could start this process, and it's probably an investment to young people that probably our city might not see. So it's saying to them, we see you, we hear you, we've got you. So nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. happy to answer any questions.
Kia ora, thank you for that, Stacey. Any questions on the Te Aoraho application? Sam?
Yeah, just one. Thank you very much for that, Stacey. And it's great you mentioned the funding that community boards do give. I must admit, at the time I did oppose it, but I've kind of seen the light in some respects.
Wow.
Yeah, I see kind of. Yeah. Hey, look, just in terms of the recommendation that's there for that one. So it says make a grant of 150k, obviously for the building that's whare, and it's to be released in one instalment and reported on 12 monthly. But when you go to the matrix, it talks about the total project cost being 959. DIA have given 130, and the rest would be, potentially a fundraising campaign or bank lending. So, should we have more conditions around this so we can get comfort that the project will go ahead if we were to do it? I'm just trying to understand how we've got to that point.
Sure, well spotted, and we do look at this quite carefully when we're putting these resolutions together. And as Stacey said, the grant from us will allow them to make start. And one of the reasons for that is they do have an option to take bank lending. Obviously, the less they lend, the better. The grant does definitely make a difference, but it's not one where they need to make further fundraising to be able to let go.
So we don't need any further conditions on that?
Because it's to use the government language, shovel-ready project, we didn't think so, but obviously...
Right, okay.
Take your guide.
Okay.
No. Any further questions on that one?
Yeah.
James?
Kia ora, Stacey, mo tō mihi and kōrero. Hea ha te ingoa o te kaihautu. Who's running the project for you?
It'll be Tōtaho themselves. So John O'Campbell is the long-term kind of manager there and has a really good stake in Papanui. And they've got a project manager who is actually our deputy chair, Simon Britton, is also a member of Tōtaho. So I have 100% confidence that they'll be able to do this and do this.
Ka pai tō mahi.
Kia ora. Any other questions on that one? No, thank you. Which would you like to deal with next, Sam?
Don't mind. Maybe the one that Carla's here for.
Okay.
And I'll highlight there's an error in the matrix. Our recommendation is for 40,000, but at the top of the matrix says 100,000. And I apologise for that error. The recommendation is 40,000. But questions can be answered by Carla. Go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Any questions on any of those four now? Jimmy.
Only one question, because these four applications, I just want to know what's the sequence of the grant funding. For instance, like application 1, and we grant funding first, then your funding requirements are not met until the June 30, 2022, then funding will be withdrawn. But regarding application 4, before we grant funding 70K, but we need to confirm this sports club, waiting for receiving approval from the community board for the lease, lighting, and the tree removal. So I just don't know what kind of sequence of grant funding.
Sure, that's a good question, Councillor Chen. So when we put these resolutions together, it's bespoke per application based on its stage, and Capital Endowment Fund will only wants to fund things that are going to go ahead and succeed.
Yes.
Some are ready to go, so they don't need those conditions. With the City Mission, we've made it conditional on the further fundraising they still need to achieve. Yes. And for a project of that scale, sometimes council funding can act as a leverage for those groups to be more successful with further applications to government funds, to other grant applications such as RATA. They'll sometimes take council's lead on it. So it's appropriate to make the decision now to say go ahead, but then to release the funds at a later stage. And perhaps Ange can speak to the conditions that have been put on the resolution for the Rickerton Sports Hub.
Just
Thanks, Sam. So the Riccarton Sports Hub, it's quite an intricate space, and there's a number of leases already on the park. So what we would be looking to do is to relinquish some of the leases and then apply for a new lease which would cover the building for all of the three groups. And without having that certainty,
Yes.
The project can't proceed obviously without that.
Okay, thank you.
James and then Sam.
Thanks. Three questions. I'll just sort of say them because they is one because they kind of dovetail in and answer it how you want. But is the Capital Endowment Fund the most appropriate place for these applications? Two, are there other areas of funding where these applications could or would be eligible? And I guess finally, if the council were of a mind to decline the grants and return the Capital Endowment Fund sum to, say, the general rate pool, what avenues would these organisations have to explore for their funding requirements?
Sure. In terms of council funding, I don't see any other community funding pools that these would be eligible to, particularly for this level of scale.
And not the community loan scheme as well.
So yeah, I mean the eligibility for community loan scheme is quite broad, and it's conditional on being able to repay. So that would be an option for all of these. However, there's a couple that are going in for other lending. So to get a grant would make a big difference. And I think John's got something he wants to add.
With your leave, Sam, James, quite often loans are appropriate. Loans are not automatically appropriate in our view on these cases because a number of stakeholders are contributing different amounts and different values to the projects. A grant is needed, in our opinion, if the council wants to go down there for these, as it provides either seed funding or a quantum of equity in the projects to ensure their sustainability. For example, Carla's project, we could have offered less of a grant and the partner take out more of a mortgage, if you like. We decided to recommend slightly more, so the partner has more equity in their project to apply to be self-sustaining afterwards when they want to expand. So that's primarily the rationale for grant and the amount. Broad brush. Our advisors can speak to more detail.
Does that answer the questions as a
Yeah, it does.
Great, thank you. Sam, then Anne.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. The other one is, so 5.3, the balance of the Capital Endowment Fund is 419. If the staff recommendations are adopted, it would be left 4,000 into next year's fund. So am I right in thinking that fund, that's not calendar year, that's financial year, isn't it?
Yeah, that is financial year.
So this will basically use that fund up until the end of June next year?
End of June next year, sorry.
So another 6 months?
So originally when you looked at setting up this new way of doing community applications to the community loan scheme, you had a round 1 and a round 2. And that was to be done in August and February. However, because the annual plan was delayed, we wouldn't know how much fund was available, so we've delayed this until now. And there's no other pending applications to this fund at the moment. And with the reduced amount, so this time last year when we were having our round 1 funding, we had about 1.6 million available in the fund, which is significantly reduced now. These are 4 strong projects in the staff's view to fund. So we don't see there being a benefit in holding back on waiting for a round 2.
Cool.
Anne.
Yeah, kia ora. Hi, Ange. Just looking at the model that for the sports hub here, it looks really similar to what's happening out at Ngāpunawai. Would you describe it in that way?
Yes, it is, insofar as the commitment from the partners. I think Ngāpunawai is slightly different in that it's a regional sports organisation. This is very much club-based. But the commitment from the 3 partners to form an umbrella organisation and have all of the assets held under that organisation as opposed to one or more of the individual clubs is probably the best example of a club sports hub, I believe, in the city.
That's great. And would you expect to see really efficient use of resource in terms of people and money because of this model?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these sports have got within their clubs a whole lot of resource from planning, architects, lawyers, and so we haven't actually put in a figure on what the clubs have committed to the project in their in-kind contribution, but it's quite significant.
And going forward, you'd see that it would save money in the long run because they're working together.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Right, Andrew, then Yanni.
Thank you. I am keen to drill down into paragraph 4, alternative option considered, not to allocate the remaining balance to community projects, rather retain funds to offset rates. And if we go back to the decisions that were made in the 2018 LTP, which was not to inflation-proof the capital endowment fund as we normally would, but rather to increase the amount available for community projects, or for the reasons that we use the capital endowment fund. And we can really say that decision was reconfirmed in the annual plan decision-making in July of this year, so only a few months ago. There's never been any discussion about using any part of the capital endowment fund to reduce rates. I'm just interested in why you would have considered such an option when that's not within the normal policy for the capital endowment fund. It's not within the reason that we decided to go out of that inflation-proofing policy. I would have thought if you were going to consider doing anything other than using the funds for the designated purpose, it would be to return them to the capital endowment fund so that the inflation-proofing was more protected, rather than using the capital endowment fund to reduce rates, which has never been considered, and I wouldn't imagine we would be considering doing that.
Yeah, Andrew, the origin of that consideration was an organisational instruction to look at and consider every opportunity to relieve financial pressure on the organisation. So we thought that in good faith and acting on that instruction that came from council, we'd look at every opportunity. So perhaps the option was more not to allocate the capital endowment fund, and in retrospect, perhaps that use the proceeds to reduce rates might have been going a little too far. But the object of that was to look at every possible way to save, and one option to council is to say, actually, we won't adopt it. So possibly pointing to an end point of reducing rates was a step too far. The principal reason behind the option was to not allocate and save. So if that's the rationale behind the option. It's not the recommended option, principally for the reason that you've outlined, but we felt it would be irresponsible not to discuss the fact that we had considered it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yanni?
Have all the previous grants that we've paid out been fully allocated? Like, I'm just mindful of things like the bridge project in South New Brighton, which, and there may be others where we thought things were going to happen and they may be a bit slower, or in some cases they don't eventuate. Is there any, how are we tracking the grants that we've paid out and what's happening in regards to progress?
Sure. So we do track the grants that are paid out. In fact, there's some grants that have been allocated and decided by council, but that haven't been paid out because they're still requiring those conditions to be met. A good example of that is the Scape sculpture at the end of the new northern motorway. So they haven't raised additional funds yet, and the resolution had them till June 2021 to do that. If they don't, then that 100k would default come back into the capital endowment for reallocation.
Sorry, I'm interested at a governance level, how we have oversight of what's happening with the funds that we've expended. Is that through finance and performance, or?
Yanni, we will be providing a full report to this committee in February on all of our funding schemes, the quantum, how far we have achieved goals, and give the committee the opportunity to plot a course, a governance course into the future, and we'd certainly be covering this sort of thing. So we're giving you an accurate picture.
Is that the funding review?
It's the funding review. It's it's the progress on funding. It's how it's been implemented, the balance of our funds, an opportunity for the committee to discuss at a governance level how we're going.
Okay, can I just get, like, rather than get bogged down, can we just get like a memo sent round it through the grants that we've made from the endowment fund and the ones that still haven't been allocated?
Just a quick status update.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. And I'll raise offline around that funding review. As chair of the funding committee, it might be quite nice to know what's planned. Cheers.
Okay, any last questions here? No? Okay, so I've got, I had Mike and Jimmy, so, sorry Mel, early in. So I've got Mike moving, Jimmy seconding. Any discussion? Melanie?
Yeah, I'm happy to support all of these. As Chair of Housing First, I'm particularly happy about supporting the city mission with the transitional housing for people who are homeless. I think it's really important and something the city needs. So I ask everyone to support as well.
Thank you. Anne?
Yes, just that, you know, this is about we only give this money when we've got evidence that this project demonstrates a benefit for the city of Christchurch or its citizens, or for a community of people living in Christchurch. And obviously, all of these do that, so very much in support of this funding.
Anyone else? Jimmy?
Briefly, I support this full application because they all contributed in the compliance with the council's committee outcome. So we show the support. Yeah, thank you.
Jamie.
Here you go. I find this very difficult because I know how good these organisations are, and I know how fantastic these projects are too. In fact, I felt really good when reading the summaries in what was an excellent report. So you've got 4 outstanding projects and 4 outstanding organisations, and it doesn't really matter whether it's called council business or not. That argument, I don't think, is the clincher. But I think here are 2 facts. You don't have to look far to find an outstanding project or an outstanding organisation that isn't on this list in this city. That's never ending, and there are a lot of people doing fantastic things. We had our Community Services Awards last night, which is a reminder of that. And the second fact is that our finances are not in a good space at all. Our debt levels are sky high, and we're tracking to have an even higher projected rates increase than what we've even planned for, unless we do something differently. So as difficult as this is, we just need to start getting to a point where we're drawing a line in the sand. The policy does allow for this. These great projects and great organisations are eligible. However, this decision was made in 2018. The world has changed substantially since then. Our finances are worse since then. Our debt levels are worse since then. Our rate rises are projected to be higher since then because COVID-19 has happened. So I'm going to vote against this because, one, I'd like to see the Capital Endowment Fund inflation-proofed again, because we've been tracking backwards without doing that. That's the long and short of it. And I would actually like to see the remainder of it returned to the general rate fund, because look, charity needs to start at home, and it's fun and it's easy to hand money out, but we need to draw a line in the sand, and I think we need to get our own house in order first before we can start looking that much further. We've also increased, may I say, another $500,000, $500,000 into the Strengthening Communities Fund. So we are doing, it's not an either or and it's not an all or nothing. We are doing a lot for the city, but we need to start making some cutbacks, because right now we're heading down the gurgler, and unless we do something differently, we're on a really scary course. So I'll vote against these, as much as I don't enjoy doing that.
Thank you. Pauline?
Yes, I wasn't going to speak, but I just feel I need to respond to perhaps a counter-argument to James Goff, because I feel that I don't think we're on a slippery slope to nowhere, actually. I think we're being really fiscally prudent this year. We're working very hard to strike an LTP budget, and I think we will get there. But we must never lose sight of the importance of our community organisations and the importance of walking alongside these groups, because that will make everything we do cheaper, stronger, more efficient, and far more beneficial to our city than anything else. And I particularly want to thank Stacey for her words this morning, which really hit home about the power of these groups and the benefit that they do. So I really urge you to support these groups, support this funding, because actually it's a fiscally prudent thing to do.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. I think we need to bear in mind how we've got to the point that we're at with this paper that's in front of us today. In the 2018 LTP, we made some policy decisions around the use of the Capital Endowment Fund to support various activities in the city, actually to use the fund for its intended purpose. And we made a decision at that time to reduce the inflation proofing of the fund so that we could get more money out into our communities for that intended purpose. We essentially reconfirmed that decision in the annual plan in July of this year, which was only a few months ago, with exactly the same people sitting around the table at that time as are sitting around the table today. If we wanted to change that policy, using 4 applications that are in front of us today as a scapegoat to do so is not the correct way to do that. It would be something we would do in the long-term plan through proper, well-supported decision-making, and I imagine the implication would be far better dealt with. The implication would be far greater than the relatively small quantum that's in front of us today. Now, I've never heard any discussion around this table or any recommendation from staff around using the Capital Endowment Fund for a different purpose than it was originally established, namely to reduce rates. And I would have expected, if we were going to have that discussion, people would have raised it as part of the natural financial planning and strategic discussion we would have in the annual plan, rather than in response to 4 applications put forward by community groups who have put significant energy and effort into making those applications. So if people want to have those conversations, let's have them, but let's not have them in response to applications quite correctly coming forward in front of us for the purpose for which we established the fund and the purpose for which we want it to be used. Let's have those discussions properly and appropriately as part of the LTP. And let's not waste community groups' time getting them to apply for funds where we're going to make strategic decisions on the hoof when we should be doing that properly, if indeed there's an appetite to do so.
Thank you, Andrew. Sam, then Tim.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I agree with James Goff. This kind of stuff is never easy to say no to, but I think at some point we need to have an honest conversation as a city about where we are financially. And I was surprised to hear, the Chair of Finance say that that shouldn't offset rates, but fundamentally, from an economic point of view, this money isn't sitting in cash bags out the back. We have to go and borrow this. So I think we're kidding ourselves if we think this doesn't have a financial implication for the city. So look, I agree. In a perfect world, I would love to grant all of these, absolutely no doubt. But when you have a government pouring out billions of dollars into an economy post-COVID, some of these should be there. Quite frankly, I look at the Riccarton Domain development. What a wonderful project and a real asset for the community. But you look at other sporting facilities that we support, and we do that by way of a loan. So I just think, we need to look at the way we do this. But I think we would be disingenuous if we said this doesn't have a rating impact. So unfortunately, I can't support it today either.
Thank you. Tim.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for putting up the options that have been discussed by councillors and around this table a number of times. So I'm really sorry that there's been a bit of a go at you with presenting that. So I think it was only fair. There has been discussion around this table around and around and around. So I think it was quite right that you brought it and to air it. But so thank you. And it is a shame, and I do apologise. It just seems that you had a bit of a go at you, so I think that's wrong. I will support these, but what my concern is, and it has been for some time, is the comment with regards to wanting to support and walk alongside these organisations, which I think we should do as a council. Sometimes, though, my frustration is that we are walking along beside them on our own, and I think there are government agencies and major corporations that could be connected with these, and I'm just I know you guys are working hard with various organisations. The criteria has been set for this by this table, so don't forget that. So the criteria which these guys work to, we agreed to and we in part set. So, I mean, we've got to remember that too. But I do feel, and my frustration is that at times there must be organisations that say, oh, that'll be right, the council will do that, they'll pick it up. And that's my frustration. And so my only comment is that I would like to try and see us working harder with these organisations. I know you do, but yeah, it's just, that's my frustration. But thank you very much for the work you do.
Thanks for that. Yanni?
I think we just need to be really clear. This is not rates money. This is from an endowment fund that was especially set up for this purpose. After extensive community consultation, this money is, as I understand it, not borrowed. It's in an endowment fund. So we borrow against it as a council. I understand that, but the money in the fund that we give out isn't money that's borrowed. It's actually an endowment fund that was set up for this purpose. So, but I just want to pick on a point that Councillor Scandrett made, because one observation is that actually it's much more than just groups having the ability to access funding. It is also about getting help with some professional services around things like project management or decision making around these projects. And I think when we look forward, one of the key things we need to do is ensure that we can provide support to these groups as they go through some of these processes. Some groups don't need it, but other groups, if they don't get it, tend to end up in a difficult situation, as we've seen with groups coming back around things like the community loans. So I do think we need to look at some consistency. I'm happy to do that through the funding review. I think that's the ideal time to look at that. I also would hope that we do have an ability to meet with our philanthropic partners in the city, like the Rata Foundation. I don't remember the last time we've actually met with them to talk through what their priorities are and to get a joint up approach to funding, because I know in the past some of these groups have struggled to access other philanthropic funding, and it would be really good to get a greater degree of synergy between what we're doing and what those groups are doing.
Thank you. Anyone further? No, Mike, would you like to wind up?
Just quickly, and I just wanted to thank Stacey for her words. They were very powerful, and it's been a privilege actually representing Papanui for the last 7 years, and getting to know the team at Te Oraho and some of the marvellous things they do there and how wide-ranging it is, and actually, the cultural and social well-being that will be achieved from this whānau is going to be actually fantastic, and it does align 100% with where a council sits in the 21st century and what we're trying to achieve with our communities. Look, it's been disappointing, I guess, some of the comments that we've heard today around this fund. It has a very good purpose and we're using it wisely. I support all these recommendations in front of us. It's going to where it needs to go, and that's the community. And sometimes action speaks louder than words, so it's easy to say things, but the reality is your vote is your action.
And with that, I'll put the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
No.
Would you like those recorded?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's Sam and James and Catherine. Okay. Thank you very much. Declare that carried. Right, and with that, Melanie Coker is going to take over.
Right, let's try and make this a bit snappy because we're supposed to be onto a briefing already. So we're on to item 9, the Suburban Regeneration Biennial Update Report. So we've got, is it Martin and Miranda?
Carolyn.
Carolyn. That's not what it says here. Cool. So, and I didn't look at who it is. But did you want to speak to your report?
Yeah, kia ora. My name is Martin from the Urban Regeneration team. I'd like to take the report as read, but just a reminder that this is a report from the period of April to September, written at the beginning of September, so things may have progressed from there, but my colleagues and I are available to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. I've got a first question. Can you advise about what consideration's been given to aligning the Woolston Village project with or the master plan with the Heathcote and Oak Street projects?
Hello, Joshua Neville from the Urban Regeneration team. So the WL1 is the Woolston Streetscape upgrade, and I will caveat this in that we don't have full overview of funding decision as well as delivery. They sit with the capital program team. But the Woolston Streetscape upgrade doesn't foreclose any actions on WL2. In fact, it's been incorporated to allow that to proceed at a later date. Following the adoption of the Woolston Streetscape upgrade, and subsequently moving into the delivery stage, the council deferred the funding of that to later years. This project is a significant cost, it's 1.9 million, and some of the project rationale has changed since the adoption of the master plan back in 2012. That rationale around the land use that was surrounding Heathcote and Oak Street has changed. We were expecting a more mixed use land, and now that's more industrial. And then we also don't fully understand yet what impact on parking implications WL1 will have before we go ahead and deliver WL2. So some thought was given to, is there significant benefits that will outweigh not delivering this at that stage? We're hoping that delivering a fantastic streetscape down in Woolston, what we're going to see is a lot less parking demand than what we have seen in the past, or the similar parking demand, and this project may be able to be rescoped downwards to a more affordable solution.
So I think the take-home message there is that the Woolston WL1 going ahead does not foreclose getting the good outcomes and good connections and links for the Heathcote and Oaks project when the funding is available in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Pauline.
Thank you. A question on 3.4 on page 63. It's regarding the Edgware Village Master Plan. Now, you'll be aware that it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago where the community actually requested that no further upheaval be commenced in Edgware Village because they'd had such a lot of earthquake repair. The roads have been dug up several times. One of the main sewer lines runs straight through the intersection there, plus Edgware Madras was closed for about 2 years after the earthquakes. It had a big economic impact on the commercial sector there, and then the Papanui Parallel went through, and you can understand they'd had enough. So we deferred the master plan by agreement, but there was 2 things came out of that. The board requested that some money be retained out of that for works that could be done that were not upsetting works, and they could be part of the master plan. So I'm wanting to know how much that was, how much of it has been spent and on what. And also in 3.4, one of the things that was agreed upon, and this is about 2 years ago easily, was to light 1 tree. It still hasn't been done, and now it says should be done by the end of this year. It's just, what is the hold up with that tree? So there's 3 questions there that I'd really like to be addressed.
The Edgware specialist to come and join us at the table.
Edgware Village specialist? Thank you. Hi.
Good morning. John Scann, Urban Regeneration team. I could answer your question. I think the question came up at the recent board meeting as well. So the update on the light, I believe it's an uplighting of the tree next to the supermarket there.
Is it a light on the ground shining up into the tree?
Correct.
Oh, I think that people wanted fairy lights in the tree.
I understand that was the preferred option. There are a number of reasons why that couldn't be done. It's a private tree on private land, whereas the solution of the uplighting is can be located on public land, connects up to the power sites factor, and then light the tree from the public land. I believe there's been some hold up in acquiring the light for that project from overseas. I believe it's en route to New Zealand now as we speak. So that is due to go in.
Okay, thank you for the update, because we've been asking about these lights for 2 years, and that's the first I've ever heard that this is the option that's been selected, which was totally contrary to what the community wanted. And the other two questions you can reply by a memo if that's fine, you don't have to do it now. And the other one I have is page 66, where you've got a gold star there. It looks a bit like the one I got in my yellow bin, but anyway. The community-led revitalisation plans, and Edgware Village has got an incredibly strong community leading their own plans in there, and I'd really like to see that recognised, because it's their idea to have the tree lit, and I think they'll probably will just go out and throw some solar-powered fairy lights in it now. They have organised the planters there in the village. Well, it was going to be a powered one.
So just to note about the map is the regeneration heat map that you've seen. Those community-led regeneration projects, Little River and Diamond Harbour, you identified in a previous LTP, I think it was, to allocate funding specifically to those two communities for community-led regeneration, and that's been done.
So these are ones with funding tagged to them?
Yes.
Okay, so if a community such as the village there wanted to attract any funding, they would put in an official, a business case or something, and.
Well, this is the way that we're identifying the communities where that particular approach has been rolled out for now. This is I guess this is an evolving, regeneration is always an evolving thing. And so that's the way we are identifying communities around the city now, but I recognise that that's something that your point about what's happening in Edgware, we may need to think about how we put a notation around that in the future.
Yeah, that's a good direction. We'll pick that up at the community board. Thanks, Carolyn.
Yeah. Yep, Mike.
Thank you. Just on the light, because it's first I've heard of it as well, becoming an up light instead of what I think the community thought it was going to be. I think it's really important that we actually have because it's a very strong community in Edgware Village. I think it's really important. Have we had that conversation with the community about actually this change in approach? I'd hate to go down a pathway that it's actually different than what they're expecting.
Was that the conversation has been had at the community board?
No, with the community itself.
There has been discussion around the issues with lighting a tree via the lights in the tree option. There's some issues around it being a private tree on private land.
With a willing participant, the willing owner, he's really.
So can I take this offline and look and see what the options might be for us to support this? There may be some other routes that we can take. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because there seems to be. Have we got any more questions other than Yanni and Tim? So we need to move into a briefing. If we can either make these really quick, or we could do a workshop or briefing about this. Quick? Okay. All right. Tim, you can go first.
Thank you. With my very quick question, could we get an update? I see in this document it's got no update with regards to Selwyn Street, but if we could get an update of some kind, that would be really good for the community board. A memo or something to the staff would be great, because I know that community is just kind of wallowing and it's feeling pretty well left out. So, thank you.
I second that one, Tim. Yanni?
Yeah, I just had two questions. One was just going back to Heathcote and Oak Street, like we had an LTP resolution to look at the synergy with the project for WL1. So basically that didn't happen, as best I understand. And so instead of actually bringing the budget forward or considering the synergy, the budget got pushed out. Is that basically what's happened?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's kind of frustrating because we've also got the Capital Acceleration Fund, which has identified those 2 streets as candidates. We've got contractors working there. Is there any way that we can get some thought into the design that would enable a contract variation while we've got contractors causing or doing the work with the WL1 to look at what improvements could be made?
So you're asking questions that that are not urban regeneration questions, they're capital program
I mean, I think
questions.
this is
So
part of
perhaps
the
we could take this and
issue.
also work with staff to prepare some information to update you via a memo.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a
Yeah,
council
maybe
resolution from the
long-term
LTP,
plan
but we've
discussions.
also got the Capital Acceleration Fund stuff, which I've put through the board. The second question I had was, when I look at the regeneration heat map and then contrast that to where the budgets are being spent, it seems to not be aligned. It seems like the areas that have the highest need in terms of the regeneration heat map are the areas that have the lowest expenditure. So have you got any process underway to rebalance the funding priorities to respond to the regeneration heat map?
So you've also passed a resolution to identify that the Central City and in the current year and Linwood Village are the 2 priority areas. So within my team, because those are to some degree in planning stages, the funding that we have is directed to that. But we're also mindful that there are calls across the city for modest amounts of support. So there's a balance that we need to strike there as well. So the reporting doesn't necessarily reflect the complete effort that goes in. But be assured that the effort is the Central City and Linwood Village as per your resolution.
Right.
So, but in
Bishopdale as well.
In terms of the table on page 71 with the funding, you say that change requests are approved throughout the year. So is there any change requests being done to recognise that, or is that separate process?
So these are also, sorry, page 71, did you say?
Yeah.
So those are master plans, and we have master plans, and we have the heat map regeneration priority areas. So we're working with decisions, planning and funding decisions that you've made in the past, and a decision on a regeneration heat map for your current regeneration priorities. So we're reporting on capital investment that you've already approved and planning decisions around regeneration that you've just approved this year.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Do I have a mover for receiving the information? Mike, and a seconder. I saw Ian first, so Ian. Do we have any debate? Right, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right, so number 10, the Safer Christchurch Strategy 2020 Annual Report. Now we have a second resolution that Ian has requested as well. So if we take a look at that, number 2. Did you want to say anything to the report?
Sure. Yep. We'll just take it as read.
Great.
Any
Okay.
questions?
Yep, great. Okay, Pauline?
Hi, do we ever do any work with the Māori wardens? Are they still active around town?
Oh, yeah.
Because I noticed they're not mentioned in any of the reports.
That's actually a very good question, and we have made
Hey,
inquiries about are they still there. I think at the moment the Māori wardens come out for events, but in terms of spending time across the city on a roster or anything, we're not seeing that at the moment, but it is something we're asking about and seeing if there's something we can do to assist with that.
I'm wondering if that's to do with resourcing.
Like
So-
anything, resourcing and
Yeah, and so is it possible to bring them into this group and participate in conversations and meetings? Would that be something to consider? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to work with as many partners as we can.
Yeah.
And
Not this one.
I'll take your point that
Yep.
that's something we will chase up.
I think it could be really helpful, actually, personally. But thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. Look, just with regards to the second point, that Anne's brought up, I'd prefer, as we talked about early, up in the informal, about having a briefing with councillors to establish where we think we should be going and get some feedback from our partners through our staff. Because I think, you know, the loss of the Safe Cities accreditation, technically that's just a to me it seems just a bureaucratic process which we're going to save ourselves 10 grand at minimum, that we don't have to keep doing stupid reports, etc. We're talking about internal stuff for our city, but I prefer us to have an understanding and a briefing with ourselves and our staff to establish where we think this city needs to go, rather than going externally and then coming back. I think it's the other way around. So I'll be supporting the substantive, but not too sorry. But I think we need to get it and understand for ourselves.
Does anyone else have any questions first?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's, if we've finished questions, we'll move into debate, and I think Ian, you
we can change the wording, I'm sure.
So why don't we just say and agree that council assess its future role and take out the work with key partners.
Yeah. Are you happy with that? Are you happy with that, Anne?
Yes. Yeah, that's excellent.
Great. Is everyone happy? So have we got a mover? A seconder? And Leanne? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Oh, sorry, debate. Did you want to debate? Go for it, Anne.
You know, I mean, the question for us is, what is our role as a council in building safe communities? So what Tim has said is absolutely correct. We didn't have that discussion, and we need to have that discussion. We need to, in this second resolution, second part to that gives us that action going forward. So we need to explore how we work with our partners that we've already got, who takes the lead in that, who does what people's expectations are of us as a council in terms of this. And so I think that agreeing to this today means that we will move on and we will have that really important discussion, and there will be actions come from it which will be helpful. I think the community often has expectations of us that we can't ever meet as council. I think we need to, but we have a role in bringing those partners together and leading that whole safer community space. But that's something to discuss, and so please support this today.
Thanks, Anne. Oh, Tim. Oh, God.
Actually, part of it I do think is to understand bylaws, etc., and our ability to enforce what the community understands, and also what our officers are able to do and are trained to do.
Yeah. Yep, Jimmy.
Okay, quickly. Okay. Because what is very important. Because even we mentioned this a safer practice strategy, but actually quite a few is regarding to the action plan. For instance, like the alcohol action plan, and also the climate action through the environment, they all kind of implementation plan. This comprehensive report, thank you the staff. But I would like to, in next time, for the more deeper, the particular quantitative the figure, then we know, even like the particular mention after the most attack, the 15th of March last year, actually the burglary is kind of dropped to the 43%. That's overall, but which the area, which has to do, which the age, if we have this more information, we know how to deal in with those issues more thoroughly, more kind of efficient way. That's very, very crucial. Also, this kind of the safe one,
Right, yeah, so we've already voted, haven't we? Yeah.
Just to-
All right, was anyone against? Great. Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, you can stand up now, Sam. End our meeting.
Sarah Templeton's very persuasive. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana, kia tere te ka rohi I mua e tau huarahi. Tau ai ngā mātapono, he pou whakairo. Tia kini te whenua, kia atawhai ki te iwi. Humie hui tae ki e.
Kia ora. Thank you. Meeting closed. Yay! Right.